Life Management Science Labs would like to acknowledge that we live and produce this podcast on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people. We'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands of our listeners and our international colleagues. We'd like to pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. Hi, and welcome to Reloscope, the Relationship Science Insights podcast produced by LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. We are champions of life management science, providing structured insights informed by science and inspired by practice on key aspects of conscious living. Each week, we bring you scientific and practical insights on each element with the expert knowledge of professionals in the field. I'm Marie Stella, your host from Melbourne, Australia. Let's start the show. Welcome back to Reloscope, the Relationship Science Insights podcast. Between the fairy tales and Hollywood romances, the narratives we're exposed to from a young age often play a significant role in shaping our ideals of love and partnership. But beyond the surface, societal expectations and stereotypes can more than subtly influence the way we perceive attraction, compatibility, and intimacy as well. So in this episode, we're speaking to dating coach and expert Julia Malakiman. Hi, Julia. It's lovely having you on the show. How are you going today?
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, we're delighted to have you. So I'm really curious to know, in your experience, what are some common misconceptions that people have about their romantic preferences, and how would you address them as a coach?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think some of the misconceptions we have are that people are looking for exterior things, external things, height, looks, income, occupation. And I think, that does play a certain degree to what we're looking for in a partner, but it's so much deeper than that. And there's so much more that when it comes to like true, healthy, stable, long-term relationships, I think we get it wrong in what the person we're trying to pursue is actually looking for. I think that's one misconception. Another misconception is I think that we place a lot of importance into this other, like this ideal romantic person that we're pursuing should be everything, right? They need to be our friend, our lover, our risk taker, just the entire world. And actually one of the authors that I like, Esther Perel, she talks about how kind of what a whole village used to provide for us, we're now looking for in one single person, which I think that is unfortunate because we put a lot of pressure on ourselves and other people to fulfill something that they just can't really do. So yeah, I think those are pretty big misconceptions.
Yeah, for sure. I love the way that you put that. Looking for a whole village in a person, or rather Esther Perel. So that's a great preface for our topic for today. But before we get further into detail, we love to get to know you better. This is Have You Met Julia? And the first question I have for you is, what do you like to do in your spare time?
Yeah, so in my spare time, I like to play a lot of pickleball. I injured my foot playing pickleball, but that's what I like to do. What else do I like to do? I like to read. I like to do research, hang out with friends, and stuff that brings me peace, brings me joy. Yeah.
Yeah, I do apologize, but could you explain what pickleball is to me? I've never heard of this before.
Oh, really? Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. I feel like it's taken over all of my social media. Like I feel like everyone's a pickleball player now, but it's basically like lazy tennis. So or very big ping pong, right? You're on a court and you have a paddle and you can do doubles or singles, and there's a kitchen, and I don't know why they call it a kitchen, but it's really fun though. It's really easy to play. It's hard to be really good, but it is easy to start playing. They don't
So
have it
what?
in Australia?
Well, not that I'm aware of. Maybe they do play pickleball. I'm just not very like first of all, I'm not very well versed in sports, but yeah, I've never heard of pickleball before. And what is the kitchen?
Yeah, the kitchen is like the like it's the so it's the part of the court where you're not allowed to step into until the ball drops.
Ah.
Until the ball drops, then you can step into it. But it's kind of like, yeah, I don't even know why they call it a kitchen. I don't know why it's called pickleball. There's no pickles involved. Um, but it is a really addicting sport, I will say.
Right. I have to say that the name is kind of misleading. I was very much envisioning some kind of pickle involved. But what is it about pickleball that you've been enjoying so much?
Yeah, I think it's just really it's great to make friends. There's a ton of people. I'm from the Silicon Valley Bay Area here in California, and it's kind of it dominated a lot of the parks around here. So everyone's playing it, and it's a great way to be active, to just meet people. And you don't have to be good. So you just go onto the court and just put your paddle, and it's open play. So you don't need anyone to join you to start playing.
Right. That's kind of like dodgeball, except that for dodgeball you need someone else. But dodgeball is very similar in the sense of like you don't have to be good at dodgeball to play dodgeball. Whereas other sports tend to be a bit more competitive, just naturally. So thank you for telling me a bit more about that. I feel like I've learnt something for sure. Could you tell me a bit more about the books that you've been enjoying reading? I remember that you're saying that you like reading books.
Yeah, I do like reading. Right now, I'm reading a book called Untamed by Glennon Doyle. Um, some of the authors that I like are like Abraham, Pema Chodron, Byron Katie. Yeah, just books on like the mind and self-development, and that's kind of the world I like to read about. So, and I like to watch a lot of, videos because I do a lot of coaching, private coaching. So I have my own coach, and I like to watch coaching just to really, you know, really refine my craft, because I think coaching is such a beautiful it's a skill, but also I think everyone kind of should have a coach or a therapist or just someone to help them, right? Someone to guide them through this world if they need it.
Yeah, for sure. Like a guiding light that sometimes other people in your life might not be able to give to you because they have their own lives and they might not have the capacity all the time. Um, it definitely would be helpful in those situations. But if you have to pick one book that you'd say has stuck with you for the past few years and that you'd really, really recommend to anyone, what book would you pick?
Oh, that's a good question. I would say I really liked Loving What Is by Byron Katie. I think that's a really just eye-opening book and will really change your perspective on your reality of this world. So I highly recommend that book.
And what were your three biggest takeaways from the book?
Yeah. Um, so the way, I mean, well, first that our thoughts create our feelings, which is kind of something maybe a lot of us understand intellectually, but I think to actually grasp it is like a skill to understand that our thoughts create how we feel. Another takeaway is that we often create a lot of unnecessary suffering because we argue with reality. We argue with what is literally just happening in the world because we want either ourselves or other people to be different. And so that's another takeaway is the ability to question our thoughts and question what we believe and to almost detach from it, and kind of gain that personal freedom because any problem we have is always going to be a problem that we're creating in our mind about what we're seeing in the world. And I think it's interesting because I think this world's like humans create a lot of problems and then we solve those problems, and those solutions create more problems. But then we create more solutions to that problem. So it's like it's that cycle, it's that evolution of creating problem solving it. And I think that's what has helped the humans evolve. And so if we can just see where the unnecessary problems are, that will help a lot of the people, a lot of the humans, from depression, anxiety, loneliness, constantly comparing. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. It sounds like a really, really good book. And I haven't really managed to grasp that like difference between my thoughts and how I'm feeling. I haven't really been able to separate those two, but I have to say, like, with regards to the last point you made about the book, you know, being like, I used to get frustrated a lot at other people for doing things a certain way that I did not enjoy. But after a lot of like reflection and realizing that it's mostly a matter of my morals being different from theirs and not being they are just doing something egregiously wrong, it has helped a lot to kind of tone down the emotions and to kind of put things in perspective and kind of see reality for what it is rather than letting emotions take the better of me. So that sounds like an incredible book to get into. And so thank you for sharing that with us. I didn't have an idea about this before. So that's great to know. And as for films or podcasts, are there any that you're listening to or watching at the moment?
Um, so I don't watch a lot of movies. I watch some dating shows just because I like Love is Blind.
Can you tell I watch Love is Blind too?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Do they have an Australian one? I think they do.
I don't know about an Australian one, but I've definitely been watching the US one.
Okay. Me
Yeah,
too. And
yeah.
they have different from different countries already, different versions. But yeah, I love Love is Blind. I think it's become a little bit too, I think people who go on it, it's kind of like, unfortunately now a little bit more for the fame. I swear all of them have Instagrams and are having sponsorships, and they kind of, I don't know if they intentionally do it for that, but it's kind of made it a little bit more like to watch. But the concept is interesting.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like the first 1 to 3 seasons were the best in the sense of we got the most genuine people who didn't think that they were going to make it big from the show or anything. Whereas the last couple of seasons, we've been seeing a bit more people who kind of expect to go in becoming a reality show star. But the concept is what drew me in for sure. And it's also interesting to see how physical attraction plays an important role as well, and it shouldn't be negated for sure. And to see what kind of communication errors have been made or different types of communication style that people have to work out, especially in the early stages of dating. But apart from the concepts, what else do you like about Love is Blind? What is something that keeps pulling you back in?
I like how it really shows like the vulnerability of both sides, right? You see what the men are going through, how they show emotion, what they're dealing with. It shows them having like brotherhood with their guy friends and how that is communicating. And then the women, and if fights break out or how jealousy starts. Um it's difficult, right? Because the editors, they're going to cherry pick to make it very dramatic. So you don't really see a lot of like the truth. But I think it's also difficult because they pick very gorgeous people. So I'm like, can you put some real like average looking people, then we'll know, right? Then we'll really know. Because if I'm gonna go, if I get on that show, I know I don't really care who's behind the wall. I know they're gonna be hot. So yeah, that kind of is a bummer.
No, tell me about it. That's what I've been saying for the longest time ever. Every time I watch Love is Blind, I'm thinking like everyone is in the like eights or nines or tens. Like why, like what if we threw in a six, like would it still be the same? But even with the eights to tens, you see people kind of not being that enthusiastic once they see the person that they've been talking to from behind the wall. And it's really interesting to see that happen even amongst people who are highly attractive. From your experience as a dating coach, have you seen anything similar in where people who are highly attractive might, be a bit more particular?
That's a good question. I mean, I think people who are very attractive, I think people like to date at similar levels. I think that's like almost an unconscious thing. They either don't think they think they have a lot of options, so why date someone who's maybe not as good looking? So it depends on what someone is looking for in a partner. Um, but I think that attractive women, for example, they're typically like the least likely ones to get hit on because they're like the ultra attractive men. They may hit on them, but they also may not be attracted to them, maybe personality wise, or they don't, or they think that, right? I think a lot of men think that very attractive women are a certain type of way, right? Maybe they're too, maybe pretentious, or they're too like superficial, or they're maybe mean. Or a lot of what guys will tell me is like, well, she gets hit on all the time. Most men are thinking that, which is why they don't get hit on that often, because a lot of guys are thinking the same thing. So, I don't know if that answered your question. I forgot.
Oh,
I
no.
actually forgot your question.
No worries. But it definitely did answer my question. And I myself personally have heard from a lot of guy friends like, well, girls get hit on all the time. Guys never get hit on. Why should I be the one making the first move? And I wish someone would hit on me. But the reality is like, girls don't actually get hit on that often. Like, yes, I guess we do generally, but if you're talking like individually, not all girls get hit on all the time, and maybe it does happen more, but um I wouldn't say that it's a universal experience for women. Yeah.
I think it's very minimal, actually. I think the amount of women that get hit on, like, you can have the bar scene where, yeah, sure, you can have like sloppy men or whatever guys trying to shoot their shot at the bar. Sure, that the context there makes a little bit of sense. Even there, not all women are getting hit on, but not everyone's doing that. Most people are just having their normal life, going to the supermarket, going to their gym, or doing a hobby, going to happy hour, and they're not getting approached. And I think it's a shame. I think it's a shame that women don't approach more men, because part of my practice is I help guys approach women, but I also encourage women to start approaching men. I'm like, why? You want to talk to this guy, you're waiting, and keep waiting, because you're going to wait a long time. He's likely not going to come up to you because he may be intimidated or scared or whatever. But I think just start the conversation. Just help him out a little bit. Help start that conversation. You never know where it could end up.
Yeah, 100%. And from my personal experience of dating around, I found that even just putting the ball in their courts helps a lot to continue the conversation and get things going somewhere. And it might not necessarily lead to a first date, but it could lead to a hangout where you get to know each other better. And that is in effect like a first date without the romantic expectation. And there doesn't need to be a romantic expectation. You just want to, the point of a date is to get to know the person better. So that does kind of tick the same boxes as well. And then you can go from there if you both decide that you like each other's presence and common interest and everything. So what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think just we're a very fearful society in general, and it makes a lot of sense to me why we are. It's not something like we have a blueprint or a rule book on how to do this. It's very vulnerable. It's very like, I don't want to be rejected because I already kind of don't have great self-esteem. And then I also don't want to make her upset and I don't want to make this weird. So if I can upset someone, let me just have it be me, right? I don't want to risk me being upset and then making her upset too. So it's unfortunate how like timid we are. And I think, again, it makes sense. Like if we can distract ourselves with social media, video games, friends, whatever it is, then why need it? And I think that's where a lot of people are coming from. It's like, what's the point? And I think it's unfortunate because a lot of people truly, genuinely desire that connection, but they'll actually stuff down that desire. So they no longer even have a goal of it, which that is the saddest thing to me.
I feel like a lot of this also, the fear comes from this place of seeing all of these instances portrayed in the media as almost flawless or magical of some sort. And there's a lot to be said here, especially going into our interview. But before we get even further into detail about this, the last question I want to end off with for the heavy med section is, who do you look up the most to in your life, whether professional or personal?
Okay. Yeah, I would say I have a very like good coaching community that are friends that I've met through coaching, and we talk weekly, we bounce off ideas. They invite me to things, and I invite them to things that I'm interested in doing too. So I think those people are what help get me through. Right, my own difficulties or my own tough times, but also they're very inspirational to me. So I just love having that. And because I'm a solopreneur. So I am my business, and I need that community, and I need that people doing similar things to me. And so those are the people I really admire, and I just love having them in my life.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes having a group of people means so much more than having one single role model to look up to. When you have that stability and you find that support in a group of people, especially when you're working alone, it can feel isolating when no one really understands what you're going through. But having that support really, really helps and makes all the difference in your life. So it's great to hear that you have some people there for you like that. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Julia. I feel like we got to know you a bit better. It's been great chatting with you. But we'll go into our interview section now. And the first thing that I want to ask is, what does a relationship mean to you? How would you describe it?
Yeah, so a relationship, kind of the way that I've been taught, is a relationship is simply our thoughts about another person. That's our relationship with them. So my relationship with me is my thoughts about me. And, you can have romantic relationships that include physical intimacy, that emotional connection, all of that. But it still is coming down to, right, the quality of my relationship is my quality of thoughts that I think about this person, which to me is very interesting, right? Because we don't often think about it that way. We think that, this other person can affect my life, right? We always feel like we're at the effect of other people versus, okay, well, if I can control my thoughts about the world and about people, how do I want to think about someone? Doesn't mean I have to be in a relationship with them, doesn't mean I have to be their girlfriend, but how do I want to think about people? That's in my control. And so I think that's a really interesting concept, because it's like, okay, my thoughts create how I feel about someone. And then the way that I feel will determine how I treat that person. It'll determine how I talk to them. And then my words go to that other human's brain, and now they have thoughts about the way I treated them. So it's like my thoughts interacting with that human's thoughts. And so I think it's just really interesting to see relationships that way, because we get to take so much power back in deciding how we want our relationship to be. Because you can think about, I can have a relationship with people who have passed away, right? I can have a relationship with people I've never met, right? Celebrities, people I listen to on podcasts, right? Because the way that I think about them, I want to connect with them in my mind, right? I want to connect with people who have passed. So I think about them and I cherish them and I connect with them in my mind. And so, yeah. And I think our most important relationship ever is our relationship with ourselves, because that truly does determine our relationship with other people, because we're always projecting.
That's such a great way of putting it. And I have to admit, I think this is one of the first times I'm hearing it being put that way. It really helps to kind of take your give your emotions a bit less power, kind of put all of it back into your thoughts and reassess what the situation is. It's also like, for example, I have a mailman and I think of him as the mailman. I treat our relationship like he is the mailman, and therefore that's our relationship. But if I start thinking like, oh, this mailman has a cute smile, I might start feeling something different, which is now borderline inappropriate. And I think we should frankly move on.
Well, if I can say something about that, because I mean, why not? Hey girl, shoot your shot with the mailman, but that's it. That I want to actually address that, because you're talking now about attraction, which to me is the same thing. I think attraction, there's like a baseline biological attraction, right? If I see a crowd of people and one of them I find attractive, okay, there has to be like a baseline, right? But then everything after that, I'm creating attraction with how I think of that person, right? I can make someone more attractive with just a couple sentences in my mind, and I can make someone very unattractive with just a couple sentences in my mind. So this is how people who have been in a marriage for, let's say, 20 years, and let's say 10 of those years, the guy was cheating, right? She's still having a loving relationship with him, right? She's still enjoying him. It's all great. As soon as she finds out that he cheated, now all of the attraction is gone, right? It's like you have a celebrity in your mind. You love this celebrity. Oh my God, he's so hot. I love this guy. He's such a great actor. You find out he's a pedophile. Immediately, all your thoughts, in an instant, attraction is gone. So that's also very fascinating too, is how we can change our level of attraction with how we think of people.
And in your opinion, what role do you think societal norms and media consumption plays in this romantic attraction and perception of romantic partners?
Yeah, I mean, I think it plays, it's a lot, right? It's like, so societal norms okay, let's break that down a little bit. It's like, what are society's norms? And I think just coming from California and in the United States, I think there's a lot that we as a society value. And I think that's a lot of like individualism. It's a lot of like status. It's a lot of like other people's opinion, right? That's what we value. So these are norms that definitely play an impact in how we pursue romantic relationships, because a lot of us are pursuing relationships for what we think that will mean, right? Okay, we've achieved something, or now, right, our parents will get off our back, or I'll look good to my friends now, right? I'll stop thinking I'm a loser because I now have a girlfriend, right? These are all the way that society and even social media have affected the way we pursue relationships. It's almost for like other people. And I think if you combine that with another societal norm we have, which is instant pleasure, and to have this have pleasure and desire fulfilled very quickly, it leads to a lot of numbing out and to a lot of, well, I can get instant pleasure by going on certain sites and getting, having my sexual desires met on websites, or I can go to a strip club, or I can do these type of things. So I think because as a society, we're so used to getting things very quickly, it's made dating very difficult, because we think that dating should be easier because everything else is kind of, we've worked our way to it. We had a roadmap again, right? We were able to get it. But dating just doesn't work that way. It's not like, it requires that a lot of self-reflection. It requires us to work on ourselves. It requires us to develop our emotional intelligence, which is something a lot of us don't really know even how to do that. So I think that's part of it, right? And then we talked about social media. I mean, oh my gosh, everything on Instagram and YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, it's all going into our subconscious of what is right and what is wrong, right? And so we had the whole Me Too movement of, sexual harassment and a lot of women speaking out. And so I have many clients who have said, I don't want to be that Me Too moment. I don't want to be that person who makes another woman uncomfortable. So we've created this society where we are almost like we want connection, but we don't want it at the expense of what we think it's going to cost to do it. And for many of us, we think it's going to cost a lot of discomfort for people, and it's seen as really a problem to do this. And I think that's really unfortunate.
And with that in mind, what do you think needs to be changed either on an individual level or a societal level?
Yeah, I think that that's kind of like the work of a lifetime, right? And I think if you can work with someone, or even look at yourself, like see what is holding you back, because oftentimes we feel very responsible for other people's feelings, right? It's like, well, I don't want her to feel uncomfortable. I don't want her to feel bad. I don't want her to feel this way if I approach her. And so we lose a lot of our own power, because none of that stuff we can control. We can't control how a woman's going to interpret us, but we can control the way we show up and our intentions to approach women. And I think that's where the focus should be. The focus should be on us, why we're doing something, why it's important to do it, and then take a lot of risks, right? Take risks with a good intention and work through the rejection. I think rejection is a beautiful thing to overcome. And it goes against like our primitive brain, right? Our brain doesn't want to feel rejected ever. We want to be part of the group, part of the tribe. We never want to be the person that could potentially be pointed at and to be ostracized. So I think that's why I think dating is such a great way to practice self-development, because I truly think it's one of the hardest things we can do for self-love and self-growth, because just approaching and like having a part, like pursuing someone is one thing, but then being in the relationship and having a healthy, stable relationship, that's a lot of work too. And I think it's beautiful work that, we get to go through.
Yeah, I completely agree. And from someone who has had an extensive experience with dating, I feel like dating is such a great way to learn how to communicate with all sorts of people. And these dates that you're going on, they might not necessarily be with people that you envision yourself with, but it really helps in talking to different people, practicing this non-judgmental approach to speaking with people, learning how to connect with all sorts of people that you might not have had a connection with otherwise. So it's great for even just social connection and learning how to speak to people, I feel like.
Yeah. And I think it gets easier the more we like work on that relationship with ourselves. And one thing I do want to say is that, coming back to social media, one of the trends that I really, really hate is the ranking, right? When they interview someone, then they're like, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, what do you think you are? And then they ask another person to rate that person, right? Have you seen those videos?
I don't recall seeing that, but ranking videos in general, I've seen that, so I can definitely believe that there's some sort
Yeah.
of ranking dating thing out there. Could you elaborate a bit more on what this ranking trend is?
Yeah, it's like a rank of attraction, right? And it's very superficial, very surface level, and it's ranking people on a scale of 1 to 10. And I think, it's really interesting because it's part of it is really degrading and dehumanizing to a person. It's very reductive, right? It's reductive to just their outer appearance. And it's almost like if this person were to rank themselves out of 10, it's like, well, how dare you do that? Who are you to think you're confident in yourself? Who are you? How delusional are you for you to think that you can like yourself? Right. And I think that's so interesting, right? But I think for other people to rank other folks it's almost like an indicator of that person's lovability. Like, because I think if we can unconditionally love all the humans, doesn't mean we got to be with all the humans, don't get me wrong. But if there's an ability to love all the humans, that's a skill set, right? That's a skill set that we have, and it can grow. Our ability to love humans and to love other people and be like, I love you, and also I don't want to date you. I love you, and also, no, I don't want you to come over, right? But I still genuinely have respect and kindness toward you. I think that is such an evolved state, really, because it's a reflection of, it's really a projection, right, of how we love ourselves. If anyone has dislike or disgust or judgment towards other people, I know they're having it a lot in themselves. And so, yeah, I think that ranking scale is just so toxic to especially the younger generation and people who are developing and just growing up in this society. It's like, okay, well, this person has really big boobs and a really tiny waist and really big ass. Okay, she must be a 10. Let me go do all the things to change myself to be that. And it's like, no, that's not what, right? Attraction is what you can literally create in your mind. And it's what you personally want to find attractive. So, but if you're having everyone on society tell you what is attractive, we just limit our potential. We limit our own freedom. And that's something we can change for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely an unfortunate happenstance. And I just am thinking all of us are made up of several qualities, just a long, long list of qualities. How do you possibly turn those qualities into quantifiable numbers? That's just not something that can be done. It's all very dependent on who you're asking, so it's very subjective, and there's no one real way to quantify someone's qualities.
Yeah.
It's right there in the word, they're qualities, not quantities, you know. I think that might have just been the most mind-boggling thing that I've said on the podcast, to be honest. But from what you've seen in your dating coach career, what types of idealistic expectations tend to draw from social media consumption and society, or media consumption in general as well?
What unrealistic ideals?
Yeah. I sorry, idealistic expectations.
Okay. So idealistic expectations, yeah, I mean, it's basically be perfect. Like don't have any flaws, don't be ugly, right? Don't be overweight. I don't know why. Well, yeah, it's like don't be fat, right? Don't be all these things that as society we deem as not good. And so you have a lot of people like don't be nerdy, don't be creepy, don't be this way, don't be that way, don't show up as your true self, right? Because who's gonna like that? And there's a lot of performing, a lot of pretending, a lot of people pleasing, because there's a crazy amount of pressure, like an unrealistic amount of pressure put on us to be a certain way. And so I think that like these ideals that we have, they're not realistic, obviously, because when we're doing life, there's always a mix of good and bad. There's never at any point in our life where we've got it 100% made and life is perfect. And, you know, every single human, even the celebrities, right? Their life is still 50-50, half the time negative, half the time positive. The billionaire, right? His life, half the time negative, half the time positive. So no one escapes that human condition. But in the media, we portray that just keep achieving, right? If you just keep changing yourself, if you just keep showing up how society wants you to show up, then you've made it. Then you'll have a good life. Then you'll finally feel good about yourself. But that's not how it works. That's not how it works. It's unattainable. And in any way, when you get into the relationship that you've been desiring, guess what you're taking with you? Your mind. So if your mind is already filled with a lot of low self-esteem and a lot of comparing and a lot of, okay, let me just perform, that mind's going with you in the relationship. So that's why it leads to a lot of failed marriages, a lot of very quickly ending relationships, because it's difficult if someone has low self-esteem to receive other people's love, to receive other people's compliments and affection, because they don't believe it in themselves. They don't feel they're worthy. And so they'll do different things to actually sabotage that relationship.
Yeah, so it all comes from how you perceive yourself, alongside potentially influence from the media, social media, etc. If that's what you're saying.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I'll kind of break it down like this. I think we need to ask ourselves, like, what is it we want in a partner? What are the values that we have that we want to see in other people, right? Could it be intellect? Part of it is attraction. Is there maybe good communication, right? What are the things we value? And then the things that we're asking of other people, how much of that are we doing with ourselves, right? How much am I valuing my own intellect? How much am I valuing communication in my own life? Am I one to communicate? Am I one to be vulnerable? Am I one to share things? And just notice like what I'm asking of other people, am I also doing that for me? Because if I'm not, I won't even be able to notice it and accept it and be open to it if other people are even doing it, because I'm not even paying attention to it and I'm not creating that in my life already.
Mm-hmm. It's like it takes two hands to clap. I'm really going strong with the analogies today. In a different way, not like in the usual sense of two hands to clap, but it does take two hands to clap. And if your partner is raising their hand up and trying to clap and you're like, yes, I want you to clap, but you're not clapping, then you can't really clap with them. But with regards to media's influence on us, there's also a study that showed a correlation between genre of media like romantic comedies, romantic novels, dramas, social media, what have you, and romantic expectations. Is this something that you've observed yourself in your experience as a dating coach?
Yeah, I mean, I think that definitely people want their happily ever after. People want, especially women, right? They're in love with the idea of falling in love. They're in love with the idea of getting married. They're in love with the idea of the fairy tale wedding and being swept off their feet and having a super amazing meet cute, right? It's all this stuff that is like a very, very, very small percentage of what the actual relationship is going to consist of, but we hold it at a very high, high weight. So I think that it's obvious, like these things are in novels and in movies and in comedies for a reason, right? It's not reality. I mean, for some people it can be, but I think for the average person, it's a lot more, there's a lot more depth and a lot more contrast and a lot more realness that happens in a relationship, which is why I think it's actually detrimental if we use it against us, right? If we use those things against us in the sense that we feel bad about our life, or we just constantly have this marker of success that's unrealistic, it makes us feel bad consistently versus showing up in our relationships and pursuing people and understanding that like the dimension of what that relationship is going to be, how boring it could even be, right? And I think a lot of people confuse like very adrenaline-filled relationships where you're constantly thinking about that person and they're constantly on your mind and it's very addicting. People conflate that with like a healthy relationship. Healthy relationships are more boring. Like they're fun and enjoyable, but there's not that constant, okay, is this guy going to leave me? Oh my God, he loves me so much. This is so amazing. Okay, is he going to leave me? I don't know. Like there's not all that drama. Because in a healthy, stable relationship, people are communicating and people are telling you like how they feel. And there's not this uncertainty and there's not this anxious, avoidant spin happening all the time. So it's more calm. And I think people have a difficult time being with that calm. They're so used to like chasing or avoiding or chasing or avoiding. So I think it does mess up our relationship skills, actually.
Yeah. And what advice would you give for identifying that expectation that are a product of society and media consumption that lead you to chase that adrenaline and that drama?
Okay, so there's kind of two things in there. I would say one is identify, like, okay, we have to take all the expectations of what what we're comparing to, whether it's movies, friends, um, TV shows. Let's get that all out of your head and ask yourself, what do I want genuinely? What is it that I am looking for in a partner? And ask, what do you want the relationship to look like for you? Not comparing to anyone else, but for you. What do you want it to look like? Where do you want to go? What hobbies do you maybe want to do together? How do you want to plan your date nights every week, right? Make it very, very specific to you. And then you mentioned another thing in there, which kind of has to do with like attachment style, which is, do I get anxious when I don't hear from this person for a day? Like notice any type of patterns you have, or right, even in the past. Do I get very consumed mentally if they're not texting on time? Or do I get very afraid if they get too close to me and I want to push them away? Notice any of those patterns, because that can be worked on, that can be solved, that can be changed if we decide to make new choices in how we want to be in relationships.
Yeah, that's really great advice. Thank you for sharing that with us. And unfortunately, we're going to end off the interview pretty soon. But before we end off, I'd love to ask you what is the most important piece of advice that you want to leave our listeners with, especially those who are hoping to navigate all of these societal influences and media influences to find authentic and fulfilling romantic relationships?
Yeah, I would say the best work we can do is really improving our relationship with ourselves. I genuinely, I believe that is like the crux of our relationship with other people, like in terms of the quality and how we interact with other people. But, we discover more of ourselves by being in relationships, actually. And that's kind of the interesting thing. So you don't need to completely isolate yourself and work on yourself, but like be in relation with other people, but then understand like, what are your thoughts, right? Gain more awareness of how you're thinking about yourself, how you're thinking about other people, and notice patterns, right? You can work with a coach or someone that you trust to help you with this. And I think a lot of it is really, so I help people with dating and approaching and all of that social anxiety that comes with dating. And I think what we kind of lack as a society is a lot of courage, because things, again, are instant pleasure, right? I can go veg out on the couch. I'm not going to go approach someone. Why do that? Or I'm going to go on porn, a porn site and go get my needs met there. So I think as a society, we lack that courage to put ourselves out there. So I would challenge all of your viewers to approach someone this week, right? Go to your local mall, go to a local cafe, and see even just what comes up for you. Like, what are all the thoughts, right? Okay, this person's going to reject me, or she's busy, right? Or this is inappropriate. Question all of those thoughts, because that's just the brain doing the brain thing, trying to keep us very safe. And then try to get yourself to go up and talk to someone, and then be okay if it's a rejection. I think we have a difficult time being disliked, which is, again, why we chameleon ourselves and perform. But I think once we start showing up, through that approaching practice, we're going to discover more of ourselves. And one last thing I want to say about attraction is that I was saying this earlier, that we mistake what we find attractive in other people. And I will tell you that some of society's conventionally unattractive men, right? You wouldn't think they're like guys that I've met who have been shorter, a little bit maybe, chunkier. When they talked and they had charisma and confidence, not in a cocky way, but in a genuine, like, this is me, take it or leave it. I'm making jokes. I like myself and I'm just showing up real, authentic. I'm not even joking. Those are the most attractive men to me personally. And I think for a lot of women, that's actually true for them too. So don't put so much weight on the looks, because the looks, again, is going to be interpreted by another human's thoughts, by their mind. And if you have other elements, right? Authenticity, confidence, intellect, right? Whatever it is, that has great influence on other people.
That is so well said. So if any of you are watching on YouTube and you have tried out this challenge, please leave a comment telling us all about your experience. I would love to hear about it and live vicariously through you and hear about all of your experiences. Thank you so much, Julia, for joining us. Now we're moving on to the open mic section. Please tell us a bit about what you're passionate about. It doesn't have to be related to the topic. We are all ears. The floor is yours.
Yeah. So I'm passionate about my coaching business. I'm passionate about helping people and myself show up more authentically. And I'm passionate about, I think what I'm passionate about is like trying to become more in my body as I do difficult things. Because I think what often happens for people like me who are kind of like perfectionists and people pleasers, we get so lost up here in the mind that we lose like that connection with our body, with our emotions, with how we feel. And I think understanding like how the nervous system works, how that fight or flight reaction works in conjunction with our thought work is truly powerful. And that's kind of the message I want to bring to more people, especially men, because I know that like it's more emotions maybe kind of not as talked about in their communities or amongst men. So helping them with that is something I'm definitely passionate about for sure.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that with us, Julia, and for joining us today. If our listeners want to find out more about you and what you do, where can they go?
Yeah, thank you so much, Marie, for having me on. This has been incredible. They can go to my website, which is relationshipconfidence.com. And yeah, check me out there. I'm also on Instagram at Julia Malakiman. And yeah, it's thank you so much. I really enjoyed this conversation. And there's literally so much more that we could talk about. It is a big topic.
For sure. I feel like we barely scratched the surface. And excellent. We'll link the links in the show notes. Thank you everyone for watching. Do feel free to check out Julia's website if you're interested in learning more about her practice and how she helps men find the confidence to start dating. We'll catch you in the next episodes.
You've been listening to Reloscope, the Relationship Science Insights podcast produced by LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. For more episodes like this from 10 different life management perspectives, search LMSL on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts so you can get updated on everything we have to offer. We have a wide range of topics readily available for you to check out. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider rating our show, sharing it, and subscribing to our channel as it helps us grow and bring you more quality resources. More of our work can be found on our website at re.lmsl.net, where you can join our movement. I'm Marie Stella. Thanks for tuning in.